Perfect. Thanks, Janessa. And I see there's a couple more people in the waiting room there as well. So maybe we'll let them in and then we can get started. Can you see that, Janessa? Perfect. All right. So my name is Christine. I am the Family Services Coordinator with the Oakville Parent-Child Center. And one of my favorite topics is sleep. I am also certified as a gentle sleep coach. So that's kind of what brings me to the passion of talking about sleep, supporting families with sleep. It is probably the hottest topic that comes across in any of our programs for years and years, because sleep is an ongoing, evolving, constantly changing issue, especially when we have such dramatic change in that first year sleep. So today we're talking more on infant sleep. So looking at birth to 12-month-old, because after 12 to 18-month-old, it shifts again quite a bit. So today's focus is that younger group. And as I mentioned, I am a certified gentle sleep coach. So that kind of is what brings me the opportunity to be able to speak with you today. So just we're going to go over a little bit in the presentation today of what to expect with sleep, what typical sleep looks like, just talking a little bit about what sleep consulting is, and not all sleep consultants come to the table with the same methods or the same thoughts. We're going to look a little bit about what happens with daytime sleep and nighttime sleep. And we're going to talk then a little bit about what gentle sleep coaching is more specifically, and potentially how you might be able to implement some sort of plan with your family, with your baby when you're ready. So just to get started, we're going to look a little bit here. I'm sure we have varying ages out there for our babies that are here today. So we're going to look a little bit here on the sleep averages. And I really want you to think about what sleeping through the night really means. So when we talk about sleeping through the night, especially for like that 0 to 6 month age group, we don't mean that a baby is going to bed at, let's say, 7 or 8 o'clock and sleeping all the way till 7 or 8 o'clock the next day. Sleeping through the night for infancy, you're really looking at focusing in on probably a 7 or an 8 hour period. So more typically like 11 to 7 kind of thing. And anything that's happening in and around that, yes, they're still sleeping, but we don't really ever expect a baby to sleep for, really extended periods of time. And breaking that down, the first couple months, as you know, as parents, is really challenging. So our kiddos are they're pretty demanding. They don't have the skill set to put themselves to sleep and back to sleep. So you're waking up a lot with them. Their wake windows during the day are very short, which means you're not getting much of a nap yourself, which nobody forewarns you of. I remember before I became a mom, I had this, grand idea that I was going to have this 2-hour nap every afternoon, and nobody ever really prepared me for the fact that that's not really the case, that our babies have these little cat naps all day long. And so that was a challenge for me for sure, because I was exhausted. So looking at these ages and stages, you can kind of put yourself in with the age of your baby and just get a general idea if perhaps you're following some of these typical sleep patterns. So for example, a 4-month-old, you're really looking at a situation where they're waking up, and again, night meaning more like 11 to 8, and anything prior to that's not really classified as their nighttime. They're waking up on average 2 to 3 times. That's normal. You're hoping to start having a little bit of a scheduled routine and sleep schedule during the day, but really you're just following their patterns. Babies at 4 months old are going to be still having all these little cat naps. That is normal. They're going to have typically 2.5 to 3.5 hours of daytime sleep, broken up probably over 3-4 naps, and then you're going to be averaging for a 10 to 12 hour night. So you're looking at a sleep total of 12 to 16 hours. Most babies on a little bit of the higher end, but I'm finding more and more of the families I'm working with and speaking with, we've got a lot of these little kiddos that are falling into a pattern where they're actually on the lower sleep average side. So tired people. And then a lot happens from 4 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months. So sleep's really starting to shift in there. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So up the first 3-4 months, you just do whatever you need to do. Like you just start constantly in a cycle of trying to help your baby sleep, maybe catching a cat nap yourself here and there, asking for support to get that build up of where sleep becomes a little bit more solidified as they get a little bit older. So when we talk about sleep coaching, and I like to refer to it as sleep coaching, not sleep training, just like when we talk about potty learning, we talk about potty learning, not potty training, because it's just a lingo thing, but it kind of matters. It makes it a little bit more respectful. And when we're talking about sleep coaching from the Gentle Sleep Coach perspective, I really want to stress to you that you can come across all kinds of information on the internet. You can come across all kinds of information talking to your friend, your mother-in-law, whoever it may be, and everyone's going to have an opinion about sleep. From a trained perspective, really know that you're not spoiling your baby when you hold them, hug them, cuddle them, feed them, all of those things. That's what they need. After about 6 months of age, you're starting to see a little bit of a change in your baby. They're giving back to you more. They're more engaged with you. They're more independent. So much happens, and it's not until they get through that 4 to 5 to 6 month sleep progression that they are more capable and ready for sleep coaching. And so one of the things that's so new that, when my kids were little was not a thing so much, talking about sleep consultants or sleep coaching, is that we've really learned that sleep is a developed skill. We have to teach our children how to sleep. And again, nobody really ever tells you that. So after 6 months, they're more capable of self-soothing. They're more independent to some degree. They still need you, obviously, they're infants. So it's once they go through that regression that their brain is more wired to be able to string sleep together. So string sleep cycles together. Prior to that, our babies are not ready for independent sleep. They really do need us. So working with families, definitely wait till at least 6 months. That doesn't mean you can't set in place, as I've put here, baby sleep practices that can start at birth. So you can start putting together different things that will contribute to an easier transition when you are ready to sleep coach. So some of those things might be looking at your sleep environment. So having a room that is darkened, or setting the stage so that you've got white noise over the entire night period, or taking routines and transitions into place. Even in early infancy, we talk about having a very final 2 to 3 minute bedtime routine and following that routine very consistently. What that does actually is it triggers the brain to recognize this is the transition that my body's going to go into sleep mode. And it can actually also contribute to the production of melatonin. So for example, if you follow the last 3 minutes of your bedtime routine, let's say baby's changed, fed, all of these things, and you have cuddles together and you sing the same lullaby, and have the same words like I love you, this kind of thing, and you do that consistently every night, it actually is a trigger for the brain. This is what's next, and melatonin will start to come into play and hopefully help with the sleep process. The next thing some of the things we can think about is really dissecting what's happening with sleep. So if your baby is a little bit older and they're waking a lot more than like what I've put in that previous slide, is this happening out of hunger, or is it a sleep crutch? So you need to start trying to determine what's happening when and where. So hunger, just to give you an idea of how you decide, well, I don't know, like is, I'm just going to assume my baby's hungry. If a baby is waking, let's say every 2 to 3 hours overnight and having a full feed every time, you need to look at, am I giving enough during the day? Is my baby getting enough calories during the day? Do I need to try and shift? Because you can actually train the brain and the body to thrive on that hunger overnight rather than during the day. So you really want to balance out those calories over a 24-hour period. If a baby, let's say, is going to bed 8 o'clock and is waking again at 9 o'clock, they shouldn't be hungry if they ate at 7:30, if they're 6 months plus. And one of the ways you can test that theory of whether or not they're actually hungry or is it a sleep crutch is, first of all, what's happening at bedtime? Am I feeding them to sleep? It's quite likely then a sleep crutch. A baby that falls back to sleep without eating again, let's say you try something else, you try rubbing their back, you try rocking them, all these different other techniques that you could use. If they stay asleep again for another 2 hours, they weren't hungry. They woke up because they needed help to get back to sleep and they know to eat, but you tried something else and they fell back to sleep for 2 hours. That baby is not hungry. A baby that is hungry will wake every 10 to 15 minutes. So it just gives you an idea of how you can play with it a little bit. One of the other things you can try to think about is dream feeds. So some of you may have heard of this. Some of you, it may be a new concept for. So what a dream feed is going to do, and you can start that in early infancy. And the reason it's a good idea to try a dream feed is what you're training the body and the brain to do again. Sorry, I'm using that word training, coaching, is to fuse sleep cycles together. So a baby in infancy is coming in and out of several cycles of sleep. As they get older, those cycles start to lengthen and they're able to better fuse them together. So one of the things that you're trying to do when you do a dream feed, which is when you put your baby to bed, it's 8 o'clock, you're probably exhausted too, but maybe you're actually, striving to get a cup of tea in or a TV show with your partner, whatever it might be, and you're ready for bed at around 10:30, let's say. What you're going to do is you're going to feed your baby, even though she's not awake. You're going to feed your baby before you go back to bed. So it's a win-win. What's happening here is you're not going to bed at 10:30 and then being woken up at 11 and just falling asleep yourself. And what you're also doing is you're helping your baby stay asleep during a feed. So what we do is you try and time a dream feed ideally for 2.5 hours after the onset of the initial sleep time. So you don't time it necessarily from their last feed. What you're sort of tapping into here is their sleep cycles, not necessarily just their feeding cycle. So you might have to play with it a bit. It takes a bit of practice, but what you do is ideally you watch, okay, baby fell asleep at 10 or 8 o'clock. I'm going to go into the baby at 10:30, pick up baby, put them right on the breast, right on the bottle, disrupt them as very little as possible. Younger babies, you might have to slightly arouse because they're deep sleepers and they're just, they're sometimes harder to get engaged with the dream feed. And what you're doing is you're literally feeding baby sleeping. And I did this, believe it or not, with my own children before I knew as much as I know now about sleep and all of that. But I tried this and I absolutely loved it. And not all babies will do it, and you might have to play with it. But what I did find was that it was so incredibly peaceful. And what I find happens with a lot of babies is they take a really, really good solid feed because they're so calm. They're not taking in air, so there's no need to burp typically. And then they go right back to sleep. There's no diaper change. You just are literally picking them up, feeding them, and then putting them back in the sleep space. So that's how you can try a dream feed. And it requires a little bit more thinking and conversation. If at any point you want to reach out to me, I can support you with that further. The next thing to think about when you're thinking about sleep coaching and setting the stage for good sleep, again, even starting in early infancy, is to start logging information. You can do this right at birth. Our minds are muddy. There's so much, they're foggy. And so just even logging a little bit of information can help you feel a little bit more grounded and guided with what's happening, because especially those first few months, it's important to follow a routine, not a schedule, meaning that we're following a pattern, not like it's 12 o'clock, we're going to eat this, and it's a routine, and logging can help with that. The other reason it's helpful is if you are going to look at potentially starting a sleep coaching plan, it'll give you the groundwork you need to move forward. So you know that you've got a solid understanding of when your baby is waking day and night, and where you maybe want to make some changes or take away a feed in the night. So it really does give you that groundwork that you need to move forward. Excuse me. The next thing you need to do is talk to your partner. If you're thinking about implementing a sleep coaching plan, or you just want to make some gentle changes in the sleep, or you just want support, you need to involve your partner. It is very, very challenging to make a big shift in sleep if it's not discussed first, because you need support and you need to be on the same page. And that doesn't mean that you're always going to align perfectly, but you need to have the same goals moving forward. So if you are looking at a situation where you're implementing a sleep plan and your partner is really disturbed by crying, because gentle sleep coaching does not necessarily mean there's no crying, we'll talk about that a little bit more, then your partner needs to be ready for that. So you need to be on the same page with it. So that brings me back to my next point here. Am I ready? Is my baby ready? Is my family ready? So just taking time to voice it, communicate it, and make a choice as you move forward as to how you want to move forward with sleep coaching. As we move into the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about what gentle sleep coaching is and what that means. So here we go. It's really important for me to take a bit of time to talk about sleep with daytime sleep versus nighttime sleep. So we all need a nap. Daytime sleep is independent from nighttime sleep, and this is really, really good news. And I'll tell you the reason why. So when we talk about daytime sleep, you can support all day long, and this is usually a bit of a surprise to people. If you're looking at implementing a sleep plan, your baby's now 6+ months of age, and you want to put into place a sleep coaching plan, which we'll talk a little bit more about, it is ideal that you support daytime sleep. So maybe that means you're helping your baby fuse 2 sleep cycles together because they're a 45-minute napper, but they need 3 hours of total nap to really kind of get on that page of good sleep. Sleep begets sleep. So what that means is that if those naps during the day, let's say there's 2 naps during the day for a 7 or an 8-month-old, maybe even 3 naps. If you're supporting those naps, you now have a child that's calmer. You have a baby that is not fighting and getting to that wired mode. They're not producing cortisol, which is what's happening when they're fighting sleep. And you've got a calmer situation. That is the ideal stage in going into nighttime sleep, where you're going to make a shift, where you're going to change sleep. So you can help a baby sleep all day long with all those naps, and it doesn't mean they won't be able to develop the skill set of independent sleep or self-soothing at night. They will. So the opposite of, oh, I'll just let them stay awake, for example, all day long, so they're absolutely exhausted and they crash like that at bedtime. It might work once in a while, but it's like you and I know I struggle with, like, I'm very routined, and if I'm not asleep by a certain time, like even bring me on to New Year's Eve, and like I don't know if I can stay awake till midnight. And if I do, I get to bed and I can't sleep. And that's because my cortisol is firing away and I can't calm down. And the same is true for babies. So you're more alert, ideally, even though I know you're exhausted during the day. So you want to put all the work into supporting that sleep during the day. You're going to support them, and then you're going to create this new change at night. So looking at this chart here, daytime sleep versus nighttime sleep, some of the things that you can practice even again before you're at a sleep coaching stage is you can practice putting your baby down for a nap during the day. And if it doesn't work, like where they're actually awake, I mean, then you move in after like 5 or 10 minutes and support them. Some of the things you can do for daytime sleep to improve it is attempt to have 1 nap a day at home. So there's nothing I encourage more than for parents to get out, go for a walk, but do try and have 1 nap a day at home. In early infancy, your naps are definitely going to vary in length. As they get older, naps tend to fall into place. Scheduled naps where a child is napping, let's say at like 9 and 2 or 9 and usually like 9 and 2, 9 and 1, let's say, those scheduled naps don't fall into place until they're a little bit older. For daytimes, you're going to follow routines instead of a schedule. So for a young baby, it's that routine. It's not those times like I'm talking about right there. You're going to pay really close attention to wake windows. And in the early infancy, you're looking at like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they're ready for another nap. They're ready for another nap. And that's part of the shifting as they get older. It's these little cat naps they have all day and all night in early infancy. Make an attempt to distinguish between daytime and nighttime by exposing your baby to light for some daytime sleep, even up until toddlerhood. It doesn't mean you have like bright lights shining, through the blinds of the sunshine, but even like a crack of light, make it slightly different. Nighttime sleep, you're going to look at creating a very soothing, relaxing, dimmed lights, very calm environment, so that there's that distinguish. Remember, our children thrive on cues from us, so they don't tell time, so we have to teach them what those environmental cues look like. You're going to include touch, a massage, and oils, even lavender, to help calm them in the evening. I talked a little bit about this already, and I'll probably bring it up again. You're looking at a consistent, when I talk about a bedtime routine, that's not the same necessarily as like a bedtime schedule. It's that last 3 minutes. Keep it super consistent. It doesn't mean it always has to be you. If your partner wants to do, part of this as well, I suggest you take a Post-it note and, put it on the wall. And this is the song I sing, then we do that, and just practice it together, do it together. And that same routine really, really matters. Dark room, white noise. So those are both, again, even as an adult, I love both of those things. It just helps to bring my body down to that calmer level. What I do want to really stress is that the environment that we set the stage for at bedtime is the environment that you want to remain consistent through the entire night. So what I mean by that is, if we are darkening the room, putting on white noise, and leaving the door open a crack, let's say, ideally the outside lights in the hallway are also very dim, that is the consistency that remains through the entire night. So when I fall asleep at bedtime, my door is closed, my lights are down, that kind of thing. If I wake up at 3 in the morning and all of a sudden that white noise is no longer in place, I need that to go back to sleep. That's part of my sleep habit. So to put on a white noise machine, let's say for a child, or a mobile that has lullabies, and then it turn off after an hour, is only going to interrupt that process of them trying to put themselves back to sleep in the middle of the night. So you want that to remain 100% consistent through the whole night. Again, and we talked about trying for a dream feed. So that's a great way to keep that nighttime piece in place. You're fusing sleep cycles together and ideally getting a longer stretch out of them, which will train them to eventually drop the dream feed and have those sleep cycles fused together. Sorry, my slide is cut off here. I don't know what it says at the bottom. I know it here though. Oh, early to bedtime. Okay, most babies are ready by 7 p.m. and a safe sleep environment. So definitely, this is I missed this one entirely with my own children. My babies were up way too late, and I had no idea that I was contributing to this cycle of them being so overtired that they just crashed in the end. So early to bedtime, most babies, even young babies, are ready to bed early. By the time they hit about 1, it's even earlier, to be honest. They've had a long, full day. And this is hard on families, because you might be in a situation where somebody's at work and, you know, one of you is picking the child up from daycare and you're only spending, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes together. And you think, well, I just want to spend time with them. I don't want to put them to bed at 6:30. A lot of babies at around 1 are ready for bed by 6 or 6:30, believe it or not. And it does not mean they're going to wake up at 4 in the morning. The opposite is true. They are going to have less cortisol fighting that sleep, which will help with the other end of sleep. So, you know, bear with it. It's short-lived. We might miss out. You know, there might be a situation in there where your partner, if is working later, might not even see them in the evening. It's short-lived. It doesn't last forever, but it is the better solution to get them to bed early so that you're not just in this mad battle. The next thing is obviously always looking at safety standards and creating a sleep environment that is safe for your baby. All right. So what is gentle sleep coaching? That's the big question here. This is a very individualized thing. I can give you tips and I can give you information and I can share with you some of my practices and experiences. But at the end of the day, sleep coaching, sleep in itself is very individualized. Every family is different, and that's okay. And you have to do what works for you. And so this is where a lot of families are reaching out to find support with a sleep consultant. If that's something that you choose to do, I advise you to choose, you know, very carefully. It's an important step, and you want to make sure you have somebody that aligns with your thinking and is supporting you. So what we need to think about first and foremost, again, is going back to, you know, that whole preps thing, talking with your partner, starting logging, all of this kind of thing. Excuse me, but also waiting until baby is old enough. And what that means is your child is at least 5.5 months, if not ideally a little bit older. And that is adjusted because we're talking about their brain development here. And so we have to take that adjusted age into consideration. And the reason we're looking at that is that our babies, you have probably all heard of the sleep regression that sets into place usually at about 4 to 4.5 months, and it lasts typically 6 weeks long. What is happening in the sleep regression, because there's more than one, it's probably the biggest one though, is there's a huge shift in their brain and how their brain sleeps and how their brain messages sleep. So as we talked about in early infancy, there's these cat naps. There's frequent wake windows day and night. And so their sleep patterns are very short. That's all they're capable of. That's what they know. That's what their brain is signaling to them. Once they go through the regression, our babies' brains are rewiring to be more like your sleep and my sleep as adults. And what that means is they have the ability to take a sleep cycle, and instead of it coming to a full alert awake stage, is they're kind of in this mini app. And that's where we want them to try and go back to sleep. And they're fusing these wake times that are fewer and further in between during the night. And they're more capable of having that skill come into place. So it's not until they go through that regression of being awake, that they're actually physically capable of fusing those sleep cycles together. And that's the goal. So even you and I wake up all night long, but we're able to fuse our sleep cycles together. We've learned how to do that. So you want to wait till they're a little bit older. So start with logging, prepare yourself, educate yourself, get to know your baby as much as you can. What's happening with sleep? What's happening with the wake windows? Do that for a week or two. Think about it. Do I want to proceed? Do I want to actually start creating a plan of how to tackle this? Okay. Practice some gentle sleep changes prior to the big day. So you not only are you getting yourself ready, but you're getting your baby ready. Our babies at 7, 8 months, if they've never slept in a crib and part of your goal is they're going to sleep in a crib, well, it's more ideal to take time to set that crib up and maybe have a nap in the crib. Maybe you are sitting beside the crib supporting them while they have a nap. Maybe play in the crib so that they're getting familiar with it during the day. Don't just jump in all at once. You want to ease into this. That's part of the gentle part. You can simply start with bedtime. So if you have a baby that's waking every 2 to 3 hours, but ideally they should be able to do a 4 or a 5 hour stretch, you're going to be coaching all night long. And if you're not ready for that, it's exhausting. Then don't jump into it. Just make some gentle changes with bedtime. So what's happening at bedtime, meaning how your baby falls asleep. So if your baby is rocked to sleep, if your baby is fed to sleep, held to sleep, those are the shifts you want to make a bit of a change in, because if that's how your baby's falling to sleep at bedtime, that's what they're going to need every time they wake up throughout the night. So if you make a shift at bedtime, then what you're able to do is gently pull away, and then the skills will then fall into place during the night, not overnight. This is a process that takes a lot of planning, a lot of time, a lot of work. So if you take a baby that is being fed to sleep at bedtime, and you shift to, okay, I'm not going to feed them to sleep. I'm going to feed them. The lights are on. It's clearly daytime, not our nighttime routine. It's clearly daytime. This is part of our daytime. And then we move into this next situation of, okay, we're going to try something different at bedtime. It is still work. Your baby's going to protest. There's going to be some tears because they're used to falling. This is what they know. But it only takes a day or two for them to slowly shift. So maybe you're now putting the baby down in the crib beside you, and you're sitting with them, and you're there. You're not leaving, you're not shutting the door, and they're not crying, beyond, being consoled. They're probably a little bit upset, but you're right there supporting them. And maybe you're hushing and you're patting their back, and they'll go through this cycle because they don't know how to do it this way. But the idea is all of those things that you're doing physically, rather than feeding the baby to sleep, are things that you can gradually pull away from, right? You can wean away from that support. So that's just doing that at bedtime. If you're not ready to do it through the whole night, will slowly help make a shift. It will be a slower process, but it will help. And if you still want to feed to sleep every time they wake up at night, that's fine. You can narrow it down just to the bedtime. So create a plan, set a date, and aim for awesome daytime sleep. This is absolutely key, because what you're doing is you're not like humming and hawing. You're setting yourself a plan, and you're talking about it with whoever may be involved, whoever lives in the house. Your mother-in-law lives there. You want to make sure she knows you're doing this, so she doesn't jump in and help soothe the baby to sleep because you're doing something differently. So this is really going to get you writing things down. It's going to get you communicating. It's going to mentally prepare you. And that then gives you, if you have a partner that's working, let's say Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I always suggest starting it on a Friday, because their job the next day, and we'll talk about this more, but you want to bounce back and forth. It doesn't have to be, ideally it is not one person doing this, that you're going to take turns. but there is a full amount of communication involved. So that day, let's say it's a Friday, okay, we're going to do this next Friday. On that day, on that Friday, your goal is you're not going grocery shopping. You're not, having a 3-hour coffee date with your best friend. You are at home helping support that baby with their daytime sleep, because you are setting the stage to tackle this new bedtime routine. So you don't want them to be overtired. You want to have, set the perfect stage. If baby gets sick or the naps are completely out of sorts, then you don't do it. You bounce it to the next day or the next week or whatever it is. Sleep coaching with a full plan will typically take 2 to 3 weeks of work. And I mean work. So it's logging everything. It's taking the time to review it. It's how do we keep moving forward to gently do less and less and less each night. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So that might look like the first day you are putting the baby in the crib and you're supporting the bedtime and you're patting and you're shushing and you're there. Most families will find that I hear them voice to me that they want to know they can pick their baby up if there's a lot of crying. And absolutely, you can pick your baby up. What you will find more often than not is that we pick our baby up. The minute you pick them up, they stop crying, right? Well, they might have to huff down a little bit because they might get really overworked, but they stop crying because they're like, wow, she finally got it. Like, I just wanted to be picked up. And then we go to put them back down and they're even more ramped up. So you have to play with it a little bit. You have to decide, is this actually working better? Is it meeting my needs or is it meeting the baby's needs? I will tell you that more often than not, I find that picking up to calm is a good start for the first couple of days. After a couple of days of trying that new shift at bedtime, we're not feeding baby to sleep. We're going to try this other approach. Pick up to calm, typically, I'm going to say, is something that most families will decide to let go of. And you can fully support through the bars of the crib. You can, be right, you don't want to hover over top of them too much too either, but you can almost like get right there where they're feeling comforted, but that's easier to pull back from. All of this work you're doing, once baby has gone to sleep, you then actually log it all. How many times did I pick up my baby? How many times did I shush them for 5 minutes straight with rubbing their back? Because every night you go back in, your goal, I say, is to do half as much. If you're aiming to do half as much, you may actually do 2/3 as much. So for example, if it took your baby 45 minutes to fall asleep and there was this kind of roller coaster ride, which there will be, and you're supporting more when they're at the peak, you're going to log that. So I picked my baby up 5 times and it took them, I was patting for 5 minutes straight and then she calmed down. So I backed off a little bit. You log all of that because the next night you're going to try and do less and less and less. And eventually you move away from the patting and the physical. And now your support is you're halfway across the room and you're shh, shh, shh. And you may have to go over to the crib, but it's this weaning. And the only way you can wean away from it is by actually logging and knowing how much you're actually doing during the process. Okay, so there's still tears. So that's our baby's way of communicating to us. There's a change here and this is different and this isn't working for me and I'm going to let you know. Okay, so the difference is we're not leaving them to work it out on their own, and it's not the escalation of tears that causes like psychological harm. You're still supporting them. It's just a communication of tears. So you're supporting your baby's sleep, but you're not putting him to sleep. This is the key. Again, right now, if you're in a situation where they're waking, they know you to put them to sleep. This is the teaching part, okay? And the only way they're going to learn to do this is if we give them the opportunity to set the stage for them to actually practice self-soothing skills and self-soothing techniques when, again, they're a little bit older. So if you're putting them to sleep, then they're not given that opportunity. So the idea is calm them, keep them settled. And then when they're calm, you back off. You don't you don't pat, you don't touch. And then you're seeing this drowsy state. They're actually going into this stage of being able to put themselves to sleep. If you get to the point where you're doing too much, then sleep should take work, is what I'm trying to say. It should not be, oh, I'm going to pat them in the last minute, oh, they fell. No, you still did most of the work if it only took them 30 seconds to fall asleep. So you want to just be aware of that as you're moving forward. It should take them work. That's the skill development, is how are they going to put themselves to sleep. So you want to be aware of just how long it's taking. The average time for a person to fall asleep is actually 15 or 20 minutes. So it's not short, right? Even let's say you got through all this and your child typically should take a good 15 minutes to fall asleep. If it's taking any less, they're either super tired or not tired enough. And sorry, no, that didn't make sense. So they're super tired, but it should take work. It shouldn't be an immediate thing that they've just fallen asleep. So you want to put them down awake. That's the next point here. You're supporting them, but you're putting them down into the crib or into the sleep space awake. What to expect? Well, again, this is a really personal thing, because it depends on the family. It depends on how much you're tackling. Am I tackling just bedtime, or am I going to do this at all the wake ups throughout the night? Knowing babies still need to eat during the night, how you handle that is, you set yourself the times. So I know my baby is thriving, they're doing well on the growth charts. So they should typically be eating 2 to 3 times a night. So you set the stage. Okay, I'm going to do the first one as a dream feed, and then there's going to be one more feed. That feed is not going to be until after 2 a.m. Anything that's in between 2 a.m., I'm going to treat it as you need support going back to sleep, not you need to eat to go back to sleep. So you have to, again, create part of that into your plan. And then to be able to keep moving forward, you're setting the daily goals, you're logging everything. You're supporting naps every day during this process, because you're putting so much work, and your baby is putting so much work at night, that you want to always support the naps. So even while you're doing this during the night, you can rock them to sleep during the day. You can contact hold them so that you're fusing sleep cycles together, because you're setting, again, that stage that we're working on this at night. You've had good naps. I know you can do it. That's the goal with why you're supporting them during the day. The good news around nap coaching, I think I've really only tackled it once or twice when I've worked directly with families, is that nap coaching is not always necessary, because what you're going to find is once nighttime sleep falls into place, and it's not immediate, but quite typically those daytime naps will fall into place at the same time typically within a few weeks or a month. So once nighttime sleep improves, daytime sleep tends to improve as well, if you're struggling with both. So it kind of falls into place more naturally. Okay. The last slide here I have for you is just a bit of a resource to keep you moving forward if you have more thoughts or questions, or you're just looking for more information. We have kits at Oakville Parent-Child Center on all different topics, and we have a sleep kit. And in that kit, you'll find some of these items here. So again, using that consistent bedtime routine. It could be a lullaby. It could be a book in that lasts 3 to 5 minutes. I love the book Good Night Moon. It's actually a great bedtime story for all ages, and it helps set the stage as well for, this is bedtime. So what's happening at bedtime is our children are being faced with this separation piece, right? And it can cause part of the upset and the tears and whatnot. And I had one little guy that I worked with, I don't even think he was a year old. I think it was quite a long time ago. And this was their bedtime story for this little guy. And he, as soon as he started seeing the books, they decided this was part of their routine. He started to cry. And it was tears of anxiety, but it was also tears of, I know what's coming next. And like, you know, all this, but it actually proved that babies, even at such a young age, thrive on routine. And, you know, he cried because he was faced with that separation between his parents, and he didn't really want it. But at the same time, he thrived on the routine of the book. So just love that book. Anyways, in that sleep kit is that book here, which I also have extra copies. If you're interested, I think I have two copies of this. This is from Kim West, who is the person who I did my sleep coaching training with. So this is her book, and it really, you know, in a longer format, kind of takes everything that we've just talked about and puts it into a book for you if you're looking for more support of how to implement gentle sleep coaching. I also have some other books, just not even in that kit, that if anybody wants support with, I've got The Secrets of the Baby Whisperer. I think I used this. I think this is where I learned about the dream feed when my babies were little. And then the No Cry Sleep Solution. These are all great resources, and I have available if anybody wants to borrow. You can just reach out to me. So that is the end of you know, baby sleep in a nutshell. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to open it up. I see there's a lot of people that came on the call, which is fabulous. I think what I'd like to do, just for sake of ease, is maybe if you have any questions, and again, just to remind you, you are being recorded. I'll try and cover a few questions. Quite often, if you have a question, somebody has the same one. So don't be shy, and we'll try and cover a few things and see what we can consolidate here with different ages and struggles that people are experiencing. So if anybody has a question, do you have anything in the chat that's a common thread there, Janessa, for questions?
There's quite a few questions in the comments here. I'll start all the way up at the top. Okay, so we have Beth, who said, I use white noise with my little one on all night, every night for naps. Is there potential for white noise to become a sleep crutch as a baby gets older?
It could be a sleep crutch. I think the only thing that I know from very general looking into it is you want to be aware of the decibels, but most white noise machines will not you know, go into a range that is in any way a danger to the baby's ears or your ears. It could be it is a sleep crutch, but it doesn't matter, right? It's okay to have that as a sleep crutch because there's no reason you can't always have it with you. Even if you go on holiday and you're in a condo or a hotel room, you can bring the white noise with you. So it is technically, yes, a sleep crutch, but it at that point becomes a choice as to whether or not it bothers you that you have that sleep crutch. It's not, you know, you doing anything. It's just part of their sleep routine.
Okay. So Carolina asks, we don't use a pacifier, so my 8-month-old sometimes wakes up and needs a 5-minute feed just to go back to sleep. He does not seem to respond to rubbing the back or other self-soothing techniques. Any suggestions?
Great question. So the pacifier can be a love-hate relationship for any of you that are using a pacifier right now, because there is an age where it's wonderful. But there's also an age where it's like another sleep crutch because they don't know how to put it back in the middle of the night. So this little person is not using a pacifier, but what he's using is his mom as a pacifier. So that is the sleep crutch. So I'm hearing very clearly that the response to patting, shushing, holding, whatever it is, the things that are more easily moved away from is not working. My suggestion then is to try it at bedtime, because it won't work at 2 a.m. if you haven't practiced it at 7 p.m. you want to try at bedtime. That is setting the stage for these practices that we're going to introduce in the middle of the night. So I hope that helps. Again, there's no magic wand, but yeah, you can't just do it when you feel like it. It has to be a practiced opportunity when you want it to then fall into the nighttime sleep as well.
So Dallas asks, I've been nursing my 5-month-old to sleep for the last few weeks, and she's only waking once to feed. Do you still recommend sleep coaching at 6 months? Also, when do you recommend dropping dream feeds?
Okay, so Dallas has a baby that's only waking once a night. Yay.
Just to feed and go back. That's awesome.
I can't recommend to do sleep coaching even if baby was waking 5 times a night, unless it's what you wanted. A 5-month-old is really going to wake for sure at least once a night to eat. I think nutritionally that's what they need. They need those calories. So I mean, my first response is no, you don't probably need to sleep coach, because you don't have anything that's causing a situation where you are going in and in over and over and over again to put the baby back to sleep. Somehow that baby's managing it. So they're all different, right? You know, and that baby's able to put herself back to sleep during those other sleep wakes during, you know, she is waking, but putting herself back to sleep. So I would leave it. So was there a second part to that question?
When would you recommend dropping dream feed?
Oh, the dream feed, yeah. Again, a very personalized choice, and it depends on the baby. If you have a baby that is, you know, not getting as much in terms of calories during the day, and they're on, you know, the charts, they're not on the growth charts the way another baby may be, then you're going to keep that dream feed in as long as need be, or as long as possible, or as long as it's working. I don't see any reason to take a dream feed away if it's something, if that baby is taking in a good feed, then that's contributing to their overall growth and development. So I would keep it in place. But, you know, more typically as they get older, you might try and take away, you know, older meaning like 10, 11, 12 months, maybe you might take the dream feed away. If it's the only feed they have in the night and it's working for you, then there's no need to take it away. It's really an individualized preference.
Fantastic. Okay, so Jenny says, my 9-month-old is going through a sleep regression after 3 months of great sleep. I spent up to 2 hours each night engaging in various techniques. Oops, I scrolled too much. Whoops. And various techniques to help her get back to sleep, eventually caving and bringing her into bed with me where she'll sleep happily. Any advice?
Yeah, the 9-month regression is very, very different than the 4 or 5 month regression. So our babies are really good at engaging us. They are, they're so precious. We just want to help them. But they bring us into this new situation of where it's more of an attachment thing, which is not bad, but it's also more of like a separation thing. So when they're younger, the sleep regression is not about separation anxiety, but about 9 months, it might be. So you have to look at what's happening with your entire family situation. Are you, you know, spending time together, or is there, you know, maybe a new daycare situation? Like there's so much involved in that. The long and the short of it is you had a great sleeper and now you don't, and that's like sort of throwing you for a curveball. This is where you create a plan. This is where, so I'm hearing you're trying this, you're trying that, it's confusing. You need, you know, take that logging piece, do it for a week or two. What are the needs of the baby? And create a solid plan so that you're going in consistently night after night. There's nothing more confusing for a child than one night you're rocking them, and then the next night you're walking around the room with them, and then the next night you're like crawling into the crib with them. Like, I mean, it happens, right? So this is when you want them to learn, you're supporting them, even though you're not putting them to sleep. If you're caving and going back into bed, and it's what you want, if you want them in your bed, Nothing wrong with that. Make sure it's a safe sleep environment. If your body is just not ready, maybe you have a toddler or an older child that you're also tending to, and you're just exhausted. Maybe you're not ready, and that's okay. So you have to choose the timing of creating that plan and when are we going to tackle this.
All right. So Vivian says our little one falls asleep after 10 minutes or so of nursing. How do you keep babies awake during night feeds?
So I'd like to find out how old Vivian's baby is and understand I'm not sure why we would, maybe
1 month.
Staying awake, 1 month, okay. Staying awake because they're not feeding enough and then waking up maybe another hour later. Am I on the right track, Vivian?
Yes, she says yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is where, so we talked about the dream feed, and you can even introduce the dream feed. Some babies are more, alert and able to do a dream feed. Most really, really young infants they're in that drowsy zone so much that it's hard to do a dream feed. So you want to keep them, when they wake up for that feed in the night, you do want them to get a full feed because you don't want them to wake up again an hour later. This is when you need to decide, and remember what you're doing, especially the first 6 months, it's survival mode. It's you filling all the needs that your baby has, and including sleep and eating. So you're going to potentially, you might turn the light on very low so that there's that extra piece of, okay, we're waking up now. You might have to tickle their toes. You might have to, have them sleeping in let's say a onesie and then a sleep sack, but you're unzipping the sleep sack. So there's a little bit of cold air. There's different ways to try and keep them more alert, but don't be alarmed by the fact that you do need to alert them, because right now, if you don't get that full feed in, exactly, you're just going to be doing it again in another hour. So it looks very different than having an attempt to keep them awake if they're older. When they're older, you don't need to do that. So just try some things that you would typically. The other thing that you can do is really make a difference between night and day. A 1 month old still may be very confused with associating daytime and nighttime. So you want to take opportunities to get outside during the day and get a bit of fresh air, even if it's for 5 minutes, or to have them napping near a window, things like that during the day, so that they're getting that daylight as well. That will potentially, it is just a shift, really. It should improve a little bit over the next few weeks as well.
Awesome. Okay, so Jessica asks, how do you night wean when they keep crying for it?
I might need more context to that. How do we night wean from eating, falling? I'm not sure I understand that question entirely.
I feel like it's from eating. Yeah, from feeding. Yeah, Jessica says from feeding.
Well, so again, I think you have to look at, is this how my baby is falling asleep at bedtime? My baby is feeding to sleep, and I might need a little bit of understanding around the age as well, but I think it's important to recognize that. So a 6-month-old, okay, thanks, Jessica. If that's what's happening at bedtime to fall asleep, and they're waking every 2 hours and feeding, that typically a 6-month-old, depending on where they are again on the growth charts, will not need to feed 4 or 5 times throughout the night. So how do you move away from that? You need to focus on that whole conversation, that bit I gave on, is this a wake up and baby doesn't know how to go to sleep? Or is this a wake up because my baby is hungry? So you need to put some work into that and try to understand, okay, so my baby went to sleep at 8 o'clock. If he's waking at 10 o'clock, 2 hours later for a 6-month-old, it should not be out of hunger. It should be, yes, he's waking up. Yes, he needs me, but he needs to go back to his cries of communicating are not necessarily cries of hunger. They're cries of, I want to go back to sleep. So the only way you're really going to be able to know how to tackle that is to, first of all, tackle that bedtime. You have to eliminate putting them to sleep by being fed. Once you're able to have that a little bit more under control, the nighttime wake ups will then also likely fall into place a little bit, or you have to choose the times. So a full night plan would be, I'm going to tackle bedtime. If he wakes at, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'm going to coach him back to sleep the way I did at bedtime. Patting, shushing, a lot of work goes into that. And then you're going to say, but he's 6 months old. I know he still needs, I want to feed him twice or 3 times even, but you control it. You are in charge of the plan. You are the person, steering this boat without, starving your baby, obviously. So when he wakes up anytime after 11, I'm going to feed him immediately. You don't let them get to this, rising full-fledged cry. You try to feed them immediately. So they're getting that instant response. That's an attention to the feed. Now my baby's fed at 11 and he wakes up at 12:30. He shouldn't be hungry. So we're going to coach back to sleep. And then maybe he sleeps for half an hour. You're still going to coach back to sleep. And this is the weeks and weeks of work, but you set those feeds. It's a set time feed. I'm going to feed my baby at 11 or anytime thereafter he wakes up. It's not that you're going to wake him up at 11, and I'm going to feed him at 3 or anytime thereafter he wakes up, and you're setting those 2 feeds. I hope that helps. It's a lot of information and you have to really think about it.
All right, so the next question asks, my 8-month-old still wakes up once a night between 1 and 3 a.m., not always consistent. He's on the lower end of the growth chart for his weight, so I've assumed that he was hungry and have always been feeding him to get back to sleep. When dad tries to soothe him at night, he usually screams and cries until I go in and soothe him and feed him. Any suggestions on how dad can be more involved with putting the baby back to sleep at night? And how do I know when he'll be ready to wean the night feed?
8-month-old, I would say, again, it's very common. And I think up until like even 11, 12 months old, a lot of babies are going to need 1 feed in the night. So your husband, I'm assuming your baby is breastfed, but I don't want to make an assumption, but it sounds like you're going in and feeding him. Am I right about that? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So your husband can't give him what he needs. Only you can. So it's not that your husband can't partake in the sleep support and helping him to go back to sleep. So going back in at 1 o'clock and having your husband try and get him back to sleep is not meeting his needs. His need at that point is hunger. And I think that, again, you're better off, if your baby woke up at 11 and you wanted to send your husband in because your baby's typically not waking up to feed at 11, then he might have more success getting him back to sleep. So honestly, unfortunately, this is where a lot of the sleep exhaustion falls more on moms, because if your baby's fed and you're not able to put have a bottle in there at all because you're not pumping or whatever the reasons, our husbands are not really able to support that because they're not able to meet that need. So I would continue going in and feeding your baby, and I would recognize that at 1 feed for an 8-month-old is very realistic, and I would respond immediately. And the reason I would respond immediately is because you're then keeping your baby in that calmer state. And the more alert they are, your husband's going in and you're going, all this, it's like a circus in there, right? And then, finally they got it. I want to be fed. You're better off feeding him. And if he's still not falling back to sleep, then bringing your husband in and say, you're on. You need to help to have this baby go back to sleep. So I would just attempt to feed for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Nerman says that my baby's 10 months and she wakes up every 2 hours to breastfeed. I've tried many techniques, but nothing works. She's like having an alarm that wakes you up every 2 hours. Any solution?
Oh, Nerman, you're so tired. Yeah, this is waking 100% a sleep crutch. So this is going back over the whole conversation that we just had in the slideshow presentation. I'm happy to, I'm going to send that out to you afterwards in a few days once we get it into a recording, so you can review it again. Perhaps, take more notes or try to decipher what your next steps are. Your baby, I'm going to say, is most likely being put to sleep in one shape or form at bedtime, so she doesn't know how to go back to sleep. And the more when our babies are put to sleep at bedtime, and they come to that sort of gentle wakeness in that, like that mountain of events, and they don't have the skills to just go back into sleep, they're alert, over and over and over again, and they don't know how to go back to sleep. So again, the expectation has to be, we teach this skill at bedtime. And then that will potentially eliminate some of what's happening overnight. So if Norman is as exhausted as I imagine she is, then we're going to take maybe just practicing this at bedtime, right? Just break it down. And for 2 weeks, just practice bedtime. I'm going to focus on, I'm not going to rock, nurse, whatever it is, my baby to sleep, but we're going to practice this shushing and patting it. And then, okay, next, maybe we're going to do the first half of the night. Every time she wakes up at the first half of the night, other than maybe one feed, because there might be a feed or two in there still, we're going to coach. We're going to do the same thing we did at bedtime. This is 100% what sleep coaching is all about.
Okay. Oh, I lost where I was. Some people are giving some really good advice in here.
Nice.
Okay, my little one is 5 months, naps in my lap during the day, and immediately wakes up when I put him down. What can I do to help him sleep in the crib?
Can you say that one more time, Janessa? My baby is 5 months, and what's happening with naps?
Naps in the lap during the day.
Okay.
So when he's going into the crib, he cries.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to assume that you're shifting the baby from the lap to the crib for the nap and during the day. Okay. So contact napping, right? 5 months old. Probably an expectation, actually. Hard on you as a parent, because you are really looking for, an opportunity to have a shower or go and make yourself a cup of tea, or maybe start something for your lunch or whatever it might be. And when you've got a baby that's contact napping, that's very hard to do, because this baby is napping 3-4 times a day. I don't know. I love the Robert Munch books. So when people talk to me about, so we put him to sleep and, it was all cozy, and then put him in the crib or the bassinet and wide awake. It reminds me of the Robert Munch book. I can't remember what it's called, but anyways, this Robert Munch books, like all of his books, are completely silly and crazy, but he wakes up in all these strange places. So your baby has like so cozily gone to sleep in your arms, and oh my gosh, this is the most perfect, and you smell so good, and then you want to shift them over to the crib. It's not going to work. So you either have to just embrace contact napping, or you can try, which I don't blame you for wanting to try, starting to have 1 or 2 of those naps, supporting him the same way you might with what we talked about with the gentle sleep coaching in the bassinet or the crib, so that you can gently wean away, right? So just keep in mind that at 5 months old, napping is not at all sorted out. There's very, very little, the very few babies that have like very, consistent scheduled naps at 5 months. Naps are kind of all over the place. So it's hard work to have a nap at 5 months on your own. So just, maybe embrace our, is the second half of the day going to be, my baby is in the carrier and I'm able to then make dinner for the family or whatever it is, because baby's here in the carrier, but I still got my hands working, that kind of thing. There's no magic trick or no magic fix to that situation there.
All right, our last question says, how do we eliminate nursing to sleep at bedtime? What would a bedtime routine look like? Currently, we do bath, massage / cream, PJs and 2 books, and breastfeed.
Okay. So, okay, there's a couple of things in there. I want to make sure I tackle them all. So the bedtime routine is beautiful. I want to point out 2 things here. Bedtime prep and bedtime routine, I define as 2 different things. Bedtime prep is the bath, the jammies, the lights are on, all of these kinds of things. It's engaging, it's the process, and it's very important, and it's part of what we're doing. Bedtime routine is that last 3-4 minutes before baby is put in the crib, before you're moving into this, it's time to go to sleep, okay? And the reason that is because bedtime routine needs to happen every night, and it needs to happen very consistently, and it needs to be a predictor for timing. And I didn't talk about this, and I'm going to bring this up very quickly in a minute too, but so you're setting the stage. This is bedtime, this is night, this is what our what we're doing. The routine the prep leading up to that needs to be fluid. So imagine yourself one day so gloriously being able to go out for dinner, right? Because your baby's sleep schedule is improving, and you're like, okay, we're going to go out for dinner. And oh wow, dinner went later than we thought. We were at this restaurant, they were so slow. You don't want to be not enjoying your dinner. So you gotta take that bedtime prep off the plate, right? We're not doing a bath tonight. We're not doing a 5-minute massage. We're not doing 10 minutes of songs while we put on jammies. We're going straight to that 5 minutes. We're going in the door, we're putting on a clean diaper, and we're putting the jammies on, and we're going to that 5 minutes because we're past bedtime now, and this baby needs to go to sleep. So you want that routine in place, but you don't necessarily want to always have to do that prep. Okay, so that's one piece of that that's really important to remember. Again, talking about setting the stage for the environment about this, because people don't really know about it, and it's what I call, and well, Kim West in her training calls dramatic wake up. So one of the biggest struggles, even more for toddlers, is this early rising problem, right? And they're waking up at 5 a.m. and you're like, what, this is not happening. I'm not ready for this. And so we need to set the stage at the other end with what we call dramatic wake up, especially as we move into spring and it's going to be brighter outside, early in the morning and all of that kind of thing. And it's the opposite of the bedtime routine and the bedtime prep. And it's that you decide, okay, 6 a.m. and beyond, oh, it's okay to wake up in our house, let's say. And so you're going to turn on the lights and you're going to open the blinds and you are going to be so excited, and they're going to have this, wow, it's daytime because mom's singing a song and away we go, right? So there needs to be those clear boundaries in their environment so they understand the difference between day and night. And I know there was another question within that question, Janessa, but I got to talking, so perhaps you could circle me back around.
Yes. No, I think you basically answered it. So like
Okay.
How to eliminate the bedtime. Yeah. And what would the routine look like? Yeah.
Okay, great.
I think that is it for the questions. However, some are inquiring about getting this recording and Kim West's book. So how would they go about doing both?
So the recording you're going to automatically get probably next week. I also have a couple of sleep resources that I've put together, just some tip sheets on infant sleep and dealing with our oh so lovely time change, believe it or not, next weekend. So I will send that out to you as well. In terms of the books, you can contact me directly at Oakville Parent Child Center, parenting at op-cc.ca, and I'm happy to lend out the books. The kit would be something that you would be able to go into, thanks Janessa, into our website, and it's under Early Learning at Home, and you can borrow that kit by submitting a form in the Early Learning at Home section of our website, and then you come and pick up the kit from our center. So thank you. It was so great.
There's actually one more question that just
okay.
came in.
Yeah.
Where can someone learn to be a sleep consultant?
Okay, you know, so this is when I talk about being a sleep consultant, there's a million different ways, shapes, and forms. It is not a governed industry. So it really is something that I think you have to take the time to spend a lot of time poking around on the internet and researching. I'll be completely honest, I love the work. It's very challenging in that, especially in the GTA, we are saturated with sleep consultants. They come in every way, shape, and form around the GTA. And part of that is because there is a program here that at one point when I did it years ago, I don't know the current circumstances of it, where you could do your training like weekend. It's not nearly as in depth. I think you have to really take the time to figure out if what is happening in that program aligns with, you know, your thinking and your approach as, you know, as a parent yourself. So I did it in an intense program several years ago with Kim West, and I did it all virtual, like, you know, it was all like done over, you know, Zoom calls and things like that, even back then, before we were more the Zoomer society we are now today. But it's something you have to take the time to look into to see if it aligns with you. There's the gentle sleep coaching, and then there's We Sleep, which is the one that's Canadian based, which I think they operate quite differently, but a lot of them are fabulous. You know, everybody kind of brings their own pieces to being a sleep consultant to the table. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.